Devil May Cry has long had an option called Turbo, making the entire game 20% faster than its original speed. But what if everything were faster except me? By lowering my animations down to 25% of their default rate, I essentially made every enemy in the game 4 times faster than our sluggish saviors. So join me on this journey to answer a question that nobody has had. Can you beat Devil May Cry 5 if you're chronically lethargic? Real quick though, I want to remind you guys about subscribing. It helps expand the channel and keeps wacky videos like this going, so if you haven't pressed the button, it's right there, it's free, and thank you. Alright, so as we start the run, you can already see just how slow I actually am. For the purposes of streamlining and so you guys can see everything I want to describe without this video being insanely long, there are gonna be a fair amount of instances where I play the footage at 4 times speed, meaning it'll look like I'm moving normally and all the demons are juiced up. Additionally, this mod would not have been possible without the diligent work of TheToasterGent. Big ups to him, and big ups to these Zampusa for catching up to me. You know all those hallways where you can just run past the enemies? I'm not fast enough to get away, so these guys actually pose a legitimate threat. I'm getting ahead of myself though. Sure, the player is slowed, but what does that exactly do? Thanks for asking, Strawman. Every animation from running to attacking to jumping is affected. The same goes for my meters. My transformation drains 4 times slower, but that also means its healing is unbelievably negligible. Even Nero's charge shot takes an extended period of time to power up, and you know my finger hurt like crazy from holding the button after this run. At this point, you might be thinking, but Lucid, doesn't that just mean you have way more iframes? Absolutely. Things like jump and dodge give me way more time where I'm invulnerable to damage, but in the same vein, that means 4 times more frames where I'm vulnerable after the iframes end. As early on as the first boss, I came to realize that most of Nero's melee options weren't super viable even on a stationary target. So I hung back, dodged like my life depended on it, and waited 10 business days for charge shot to fill up. Normal encounters were a bit more chill than boss fights, for now, but these scissors could be quite troublesome. The best way to deal with them is to parry an attack and hit their weak point, but reacting to a snip with a swing of my own was basically out of the question. Fortunately, there's an alternative. If you land a charge shot or devil trigger explosion on the menacing mannequin, they'll enter a brief daze where they're susceptible to a grab that will take them out immediately. Usually, you don't get juggled or comboed by enemies, but it is possible. With certain types of hit stun in the air, you can be hit again immediately. It's just that typically things aren't fast enough to do that. Except in the case of this run. It's the same on the ground. If an attack only makes you flinch, you're still vulnerable, and in my case, probably about to get hit again. Goliath made me adapt to a unique strategy because he punches a lot, and I had to be ready for those flaming fists. In most instances, falling in the air led to me getting smacked, so I tried sticking to the ground and utilizing Nero's special perfect dodge, Table Hopper. I equipped a bunch of Gerber breakers to expand my dodging options, and slowly chipped away at the knuckle-scrapping fart in the wind. Something that's going to become a bit relevant later is how Nero's grab works. Once an enemy is put into a buster animation, they become tied to the player's work rate, but at a certain point they get released, so to speak, which means they can wind up recovering and then attack me while I'm still stuck in the end of the grab. It wasn't much of a problem in this fight, nor was it an issue against Artemis, but it did make something strange happen. It seems like for certain grabs, the game attaches the camera to the boss, as we can see here with it following Artie as she zoomed across the arena. She likes to do that a lot, by the way. So much so that I could never really get to her. Charge shot once again came in clutch, as well as the buster arm. Nero can grab an enemy naturally, but the buster arm does it better. Its base damage is 2 times higher, and if you break it on the foe's face, it does a whopping 20 times more damage. Fortunate for me, Artemis enjoyed trying to dive bomb me, providing the perfect opportunity to grab her out of it. And anytime she decided to do the attack that nobody has ever actually seen, scene, there was a free breakage grab for tons of damage. All that being said, this boss was a wall. I had to react nigh instantly to her dashes in order to get the grab. She had turrets that frequently added more shots that I had to dodge, and I haven't mentioned it yet, but I'm doing all of this on Dante Must Die, the hardest difficulty in the game. It was pretty rough. V stands for very slow, and since this mod makes the player character slower, his pets Shadow and Griffin were actually unaffected. Unlike Nero, V has no recovery frames within his side dodge, allowing you to seamlessly chain dodges together indefinitely. So what happens when you slow down infinite iframes? They're still infinite. In a more interesting twist, there are a few animations that use Griffin to carry V, and since the bird finishes the animation quicker than the human, I was able to do this. I call it bird surfing, and it's a feature, not a bug. The minions weren't left entirely untouched, however. The speed at which their charge attacks charge up turns out to be tied to the player. Basically, Griffin's most powerful move, Blockade, became unusable. Those lightning strikes deal great damage, have a great area of effect, and were now a great waste of my time. Nightmare technically got a buff because, much like Nero, my Devil Trigger was draining slower, but Nightmare was moving at normal speed. Every time he uses a beam, it takes a fixed amount of meter, so while he didn't actually stay out as long as you might expect, he certainly put in more work than normal. The anomalies with V just kept piling up the further in I got, eventually culminating against Garion Knight. This horse has the power to affect time, essentially slowing the player down like I've already been doing this whole run. Based on prior testing, the slow spheres should just slow me down to 10% speed while within them, and to pull back the curtain a little bit, that's exactly how it worked against Urizen's bubbles. But for some reason, Garion's spheres actually sped me up. Well within them, I was moving at normal default speed, which at the time felt insanely fast to me. Wait, V, wait, you're going too fast, you'll skip too far ahead. Nero felt the most neutered by the speed adjustment, even though he has some nice situational answers that other characters didn't. Like Helter Skelter's breakage simultaneously providing 10 billion iframes while taking a chunk out of Urizen's crystal barrier. On the other hand, V had the unique option of dealing with an encounter by not. The second fight of the mission has two Judecas, one of the most troublesome enemies in the entire game. So instead of contending with that, I went for a skip. By taking an alternate path, you can go above the would-be arena, and from there, a series of inputs can get you just past the fight trigger, so you can continue on your merry way with nothing to stop you. My version was a bit different than how it's done normally thanks to the bird surfing, but hey, I'm not complaining. Dante was by far the easiest character in this run for one simple reason: Royal Guard. Already a ridiculously potent option, the slowdown made the perfect block window that much easier. There's really not much to talk about with any of his sections. If you're curious how I handled a specific encounter or boss with him, the answer is Royal Guard. So with such a broken option, why in the world did I choose Nero to do mission 13? I really don't know. I just wanted to grab stuff, I guess. The next mission was V's last, and it was a boss rush. I thought about mixing up my normal route, but I ended up sticking with it. I challenged Goliath first and grabbed Shadow to be my champion. Then, once I got Nightmare in the next boss room, the rest was cake. But if you've been around as long as I have, you'll know that the cake is a lie. What do I mean by that? Mission 15 sucked. You know how hallways were dangerous because I couldn't outrun the enemies? Well, there's one in particular that had a Lusakia who loves to teleport around and cast a metric brickload of magic, much of which ended up being kinda unavoidable. As I ran to the next encounter, he just kept chasing me down, throwing lightning and ice my way until I couldn't handle it. I think I died more times trying to get to the next encounter than I did actually doing said encounter. Normally, you can use a technique called camera trick to take the enemies off screen, thus making them extremely passive. But because my magic friend teleported on screen constantly, I had to do a reverse camera trick. I looked behind me so the demon would teleport back there and not in the direction I was heading. It was super effective. And then there was Malthus. This boss is kind of a pushover when you're playing the game normally, but during this challenge, Malphus was the hardest thing I've had to contend with so far. A few factors were at play that put me at a huge disadvantage. First of all, there are technically two entities, the chicken and the woman. Both can attack simultaneously, with the chicken doing physical attacks while the lady casts magic. Additionally, partway through the fight, she heals by a substantial amount. This is another attack that nobody has ever actually seen, because you would normally stagger her out of it, but I couldn't. Finally, in her last phase, she liked to cast this spike magic, which created some potentially undodgeable situations if I didn't manage my resources perfectly. After going through several iterations of breaker setups, I settled upon just using Gerbera. Its active hitbox provided iframes and a parry at the same time, which I used to loop the boss. Malphus would teleport away and do an attack. I would parry it, and this caused the bird to do the exact same thing again. This prevented Malphus from casting magic, provided I was able to parry the first attack. If I missed, it was kind of a free-for-all until she decided to teleport again. I charged my gun during the loops because most of the time that was the only way I was able to hit the boss. At low HP, she started throwing in a new melee attack, this wing swipe from the side. For whatever reason, I felt like the parry hitbox on that one was a lot more janky, so more often than not, I missed it and had to improvise, which usually didn't go well for me. But eventually I got lucky and she gave me a pattern where she spammed floor magic instead of shooting spikes at me. Melee attacks did become part of the equation when I kept myself in a spot to loop the bird trying to stomp on me, and you can see just how dangerous mistiming a single dodge could be. I almost lost this winning attempt, but I clutched up and just barely pulled it out. Alright, let me check my notes. Royal Guard. Royal Guard. Mission 20, Virgil. If you've seen any of my challenge runs, you'll know that I typically don't talk about this fight because it always ends up being so much easier compared to the Mission 19 version, and there's just not much to talk about. But today, the roles are reversed. Nero at 25% speed is not equipped to handle this fight. Virgil's windows for punishment are pretty small and they come after he does an attack. So by the time I'm out of whatever move I use to dodge the attack, his opening has come and gone. Even when I did have a chance to hit him, it had to be with a charged gunshot, and the animation for that wound up being too slow sometimes. What was I going to do? If I could knock him back 3 times, he would take a knee and I could grab him for a nice bit of damage. I just had to figure out how the heck I was gonna get him to that state in the first place. I thought about how effective Dante's round trips are for that, but I'm not Dante. However, Nero does have access to something similar. Punchline. The animation to send it out was slowed down, but once the arm itself got detached, it would fly around at normal speeds, meaning if I sent that out at the right time, it would basically knock Virgil back for me. I decided to also take some buster arms for that sweet 20 times damage when the boss took a knee. The first one was free. Once he devil triggered though, it got a little more complex. Using the breakage for the buster arm does a cool grab on DT'd Virgil where you smash him and his doppelganger into one another. The issue, it grabs the fake first and then it tries to get Virgil partway through the animation. Because I was so slow, more often than not, Virgil would get up and teleport away before he joined the grab, leading me to unfortunately break my arm for nothing. And even when the grab did go through, Virgil would recover quicker than me and could chunk my health bar while I was still recovering. I wound up resorting to doing the grab in the air where none of that silliness would happen, but it also meant I got less damage out of the knockdown. As he got lower on health, he also got more aggressive and my openings became less and less. I wanted to be high in the air so his judgment cuts would miss me and I could throw out punchline, but landing was extremely dangerous. In many situations, I was forced to remain on the ground, dodging attacks with table hopper, but doing that never gave me a chance to send out my breaker. The fight wound up being such a delicate balance, and by the way, Virgil deals a ton of damage. A single bad dodge or trying to land at the wrong time could see my entire health bar gone in a blink. I threw attempt after attempt at the Devil in Blue, where I was met with failure after failure. 5 hours worth of tries later, I started to feel hopeless. Was this fight actually impossible? Does the run die here? The odds were stacked far too high against me, yet I persevered, eating the pavement at every turn until something broke, and it wasn't me. On one rogue attempt, I just barely had enough time to get a grounded buster on him at low health, and then I got lucky that he didn't decide to hit me afterward. He sent a bunch of summoned swords my way, which I had to dodge by devil triggering, which then happened to parry a few of them back at him, halving his remaining health. A well-timed charge shot took most of the rest, but it wasn't over yet. I needed a little bit more, and Virgil was doing everything in his power to stop me. I took some hits and we traded blows, but eventually, I came out on top. And there you have it. Can you beat DMC5 at 25% player work rate? Yes. It's by no means easy, but it can be done on DMD, the hardest difficulty. I gotta say, this run really messed me up. For real, the past few days, my dreams have been in slow motion. I'm so relieved to be done with it. This is probably in the top 3 hardest challenge runs I've ever done, solely because of the Nero sections. My boy was riding the struggle bus all the way home, and so was I. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Sayonara.